The communications hub for the Islamic terrorist organization al-Qaeda was once located in the nondescript Madba neighborhood located in the city of Sana'a, Yemen. Ahmed al-Hada, a native of the Dharmar Governorate located in the south of Sana'a, owned a building there. There is quite little to know how he came to own the property, however. Up on the second floor of the home lies a decorative balcony adorned in white with brown strip and lightly shaded brown adorning the window frames outside. Al-Hada was once a mujid from the Afghan-Soviet War in 1979. It's where he met a young Saudi by the name of Osama Bin Laden, who was an upstart using the war as his launchpad for greater things. Al-Hada always kept in touch with Bin Laden, and when he moved to the Madba territory in 1994, his home slowly became a hub of sorts for other mujahid who were former freedom fighters, as Zygmunt Brzezinski once called them. From 1996 to 2006, the home became a global switchboard for al-Qaeda. However, there are some level of debate as to when exactly the intelligence agencies began monitoring bin Laden. According to Dan Coleman, an FBI liaison officer in New York, quote, "It has not been revealed when U.S. intelligence agencies monitoring bin Laden began exactly, though the CIA was tailing him into Sudan by the end of 1991. But in the late 1995, the FBI has given 40 thick files on bin Laden from the CIA and NSA, mostly communications intercepts. The sheer amount of material suggests the surveillance had been going on for several years." End quote. Coleman will begin examining those files and finds that many of them are transcripts from wiretap phones tied to bin Laden's businesses in Khartoum, Sudan, where bin Laden lives from 1991 to 1996. In that year of 96, the National Security Agency had begun tapping bin Laden's satellite phone. The phone was brought by an individual named Ziyad Khaleel, whom bought the Compact M satellite phone while in Virginia. More than 200 calls were placed to Yemen. The number 00967 1200578 kept popping up often enough that NSA analysts monitoring the line had red flagged the number. It became a hotline, as they called it. It then became of interest to those who were beginning to closely monitor the activities of bin Laden and al-Qaeda, and ultimately came from a home in Sana'a, Yemen. The NSA then began tapping also the home of Ahmed al-Hada, beginning supposedly in 1996, although this is a questionable debate. The NSA claimed to have begun tapping the al-Hada home in 1998, but according to those of the I-49 counterterrorism unit in New York, an investigation team dedicated to tracking down bin Laden, the tapping of the home began in 1996. The FBI would complain about the NSA not sharing data with them in regards to the home. The I-49 unit in New York City then began planning to build their own electronic antennas near Afghanistan to monitor the home of Ahmed al-Hada. This would give the NSA pause, and they agreed to share data with the FBI. But what data would be shared? By 1998, the NSA gives up transcripts from 114 phone calls to prevent the antennas from being built, but refuses to give up any more. Incidentally, bin Laden would cease using his satellite phone due to the bombing campaign from United States warcraft, which were in response to the U.S. Embassy bombings in East Africa. Some have speculated that the satellite phone was compromised from a New York Times report, but this was unfounded. Ironically enough, in the East Africa bombing trial of Muhammad al-Awali, the Yemen hub number was publicly released. Not even noticed by even the more vigorous al-Qaeda member, not even Ahmed al-Hada, as the phone was still in use even after the trial ended. A quote from The Guardian said, quote, "The FBI traced the line to Baku in Azerbaijan and pulled the phone records. They claimed these showed a series of calls from the number in Yemen, the number of the satellite phone registered as Kandahar Communications that the FBI suspected was used by al-Qaeda. So they got the call records for the Afghan satellite phone. These, as predicted, show calls to Baku, but they also, the FBI claims, showed calls to a number in Yemen, the Sana'a number of al-Hawali's friend. On the records for that line, they could see several calls to and from Nairobi, which could easily be traced to the Ramada Hotel in the suburb of Iftin in Nairobi, to be exact. The records didn't show the room number. They didn't need to, end quote. Many discrepancies began to show how the FBI received the Yemen hub number. According to I-49 Task Force member John Antisev, he began talking to al-Awali while he received medical care from his wounds attributed to the 98 East Africa bombings. According to the CIA, it came from the joint account of the CIA and NSA, who shared the number with the investigative I-49 unit. The U.S. monitors the house through bugs planted inside and through spy satellites to monitor people leaving and entering it. While the NSA can intercept all incoming and receiving calls, the CIA can only intercept calls from maid to home. However, Antisev says that the CIA and NSA never shared the number with him and that he received the number from al-Hawali. Alex Station Chief Michael Scheuer began to ask the NSA for all calls were saved and transcribed so their analysts can collect the data and act on the information. However, the NSA is rather reluctant to share the data, leading Scheuer to go to NSA Deputy Director Barbara McNamara and vigorously complain about sharing the data. McNamara stated to Scheuer that if the CIA were to compromise the NSA monitoring the Yemen house, they would legally take action against the CIA. Scheuer would relent to pressure and took action in another way. Alex Station would begin monitoring those coming in and out of the house through old-fashioned human intelligence. Meanwhile, another figure to note that was active in the house was an individual who ended up having larger ramifications. Khaled al-Midhar, who would end up marrying the daughter of Ahmed al-Hada, Hoda al-Hada. Meanwhile, the FBI began ramping up their investigations into the Yemen hub. Beginning in the autumn of 1998, the FBI uses the phone records of the al-Qaeda communications to build a map of al-Qaeda's global organization. A map showing all the places in the world that have communicated with the hub is posted on the wall of the Interagency Counterterrorism I-49 Squad in New York City. The U.S.'s coal bombing operations were fully known to those in the intelligence community if it is true that the Yemen hub number was indeed monitored by the NSA and CIA. The question is, why wasn't the operation stopped from transpiring? The CIA, as the primary organization for gathering foreign intelligence, has jurisdiction over conversations on the al-Hada phone due to this being an overseas investigation where the CIA can legally operate as opposed as it to being inside the United States where the FBI would have jurisdiction. This simple revelation would have even bigger consequences in regards to the September 11th, 2001 attacks, where the CIA would lead other agencies working in Alex Station to believe the next attack would be in East Asia and not in America. Because of this, the analyst at Alex Station would not share pertinent data it received about Khaled al-Midhar and Nawaf Hazmi obtaining dual-entry U.S. visas and coming to the United States to anyone. The FBI is also not informed about Khaled al-Midhar and Nawaf Hazmi making calls to the communications hub from the U.S. between the spring of 2000 and the summer of 2001. The FBI also asks the NSA to pass any calls between the communications hub and the United States to the FBI. But the NSA does not do this either, leading I-49 Unit Chief John O'Neill to loudly complain at principals meetings at the White House about the reluctance of sharing data from both the CIA and NSA. Meanwhile, the NSA had learned to intercept the calls at an important meeting between high-level al-Qaeda operatives would take place in Malaysia January of 2000. This information is immediately shared with analysts at Alex Station and those of the FBI I-49 unit. The NSA learns of three names from these calls: Khaled al-Midhar, Nawaf al-Hazmi, and Salem al-Hazmi. Although Khaled al-Midhar's full name was mentioned in one call, the NSA only passes on his first name. However, this too would become questionable as to how the CIA learned of Khaled al-Midhar. According to a New Yorker article from Lawrence Wright, the CIA was aware of al-Midhar and al-Hazmi's involvement with al-Qaeda, having been informed by Saudi intelligence during a 1999 meeting in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. On January 4th of 2000, Khaled al-Midhar would stop over in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, to stay at a hotel before going to a meeting in Malaysia. The CIA had begun following him since he left Yemen. While al-Midhar was away from his room, CIA agents broke into it and began photographing al-Midhar's passport, which gave them his full name, birth information, and passport number for the first time, and alerted them that he had an entry visa to the United States. This data would be shared to Alex station analysts immediately, but not with FBI agents working in the station. Agents such as Mark Rossini, Doug Miller, and Maggie Gillespie would be left in the dark regarding this information. That is, until Doug Miller read the cable regarding the information uncovered by the CIA. Miller immediately drafted a cable trying to warn FBI headquarters in New York City that a known al-Qaeda operative who had direct affiliations with the 1998 East Africa bombings and the 2000 USS Cole bombing was coming to the United States. The draft cable was left for one final review, but one CIA analyst, Michelle Ann Casey, had intercepted the cable and reported it to Alex Station Deputy Director Tom Wilshire. Wilshire read the cable, and Casey had put a suspension on it, being sent writing on the cable, "Please hold off now," per Wilshire. The cable was never sent to the FBI, and Mark Rossini would grow impatient and began adamantly remarking that investigators from the FBI had to become aware of this revelation. Casey would reply to Rossini after confronting her, quote, "Look, the next attack is going to happen in Southeast Asia. It's not the Bureau's jurisdiction. When we want the FBI to know about it, we'll let them know. But the next Bin Laden attack is going to happen in Southeast Asia," end quote. Rossini also claims Alfreda Francis Bukowski, a manager at the Bin Laden issue station, covered for Casey by telling congressional investigators that she walked from her office to FBI headquarters to deliver the information about al-Midhar having a U.S. visa. FBI log groups, however, proved this claim false. On January 5th of 2000, Khaled al-Midhar arrives in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, for an al-Qaeda high-level meeting. The meeting would have many prominent members of terrorist organizations worldwide, including Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Ramzi bin al-Shib, Ridwan Isamuddin, Tawfiq bin Atash. The meeting would be held for 3 days, while in the hotel room rented by Yazid Sufat, a member of Jeddah Islamiyah, an Indonesia terrorist organization. CIA agents would take photographs of the participants, and the photos would not be shared with the FBI until much later, when CIA liaison officer Clark Shannon met with the FBI agents Steve Bongard, Russell Fincher, and Dina Corsi. The 2-hour meeting between the CIA and FBI in New York was in regards to the USS Cole bombing investigation, but evidently it was more than just that. Although there was no actual agenda for the meeting, and Corsi would later say it is a brainstorming session, author Lawrence Wright will say that one of the reasons for the meeting is that CIA case officer Tom Wilshire, an associate of Shannon's, wanted to know what the FBI knew about the al-Qaeda Malaysia Summit meeting and Khaled al-Midhar. To see if Bongard knew who was in the photographs obtained from the Malaysia Summit, Bongard and Fincher asked who is in the pictures, why they were taken, and whether there are other photos of the meeting. Shannon refuses to say, but Corsi eventually admits that one of the men is named Khaled al-Midhar. As a name alone is not sufficient reason to start an investigation, Bongard asks for a date of birth or other details that will allow him to know which Khaled al-Midhar in the world is being discussed, but Shannon refuses to provide them. Shannon admits that al-Midhar was traveling on a Saudi passport and then leaves the meeting, and he doesn't tell them that Midhar dual entry visa into the United States or that al-Midhar had also an ID card. This neglect would come into full form after the September 11th terrorist attacks. The CIA, and more importantly, the NSA, would never be held irresponsible in regards to their outright refusal to share sensitive and pertinent data with the FBI and the State Department and other investigative agencies inside the United States. Later on, the Office of the Inspector General released its report in regards to the FBI's handling of the intelligence relating to the 9/11 attacks in November of 2004. Its conclusion was due to outright malfeasance. Quote, in sum, we found individual and systematic failings in the FBI's handling of information regarding the Hazmi and al-Midhar matter. The FBI had at least 5 opportunities to learn about their presence inside the United States and to seek and find them before September 11, 2001. Much of the cause for these lost opportunities involved systematic problems. We found information sharing problems between the CIA and the FBI and systematic problems within the FBI related to counterterrorism investigations. The systematic problems included inadequate oversight and guidance provided to FBI detailers at the CIA, the FBI employees' lack of understanding of CIA procedures, the inconsistent documentation of intelligence information received informally by the FBI, the lack of priority given to counterterrorism investigations by the FBI before September 11, and the effect of the wall on FBI criminal investigations. Our review also found that the CIA did not provide information to the FBI about al-Hazmi and al-Midhar when it should have, and we believe the CIA shares significant responsibility for the breakdown in the Hazmi and al-Midhar case. However, the FBI also failed to fully exploit the information that was made available to them. In addition, the FBI did not assign sufficient priority to the investigation when it learned in August of 2001 that al-Hazmi and al-Midhar were in the United States. While we do not know what have happened had the FBI learned sooner or pursued its investigation more aggressively, the FBI lost several important opportunities to find al-Hazmi and al-Midhar before the September 11 attacks. End quote. However, the FBI were made scapegoats. For the information regarding al-Hazmi and al-Midhar were vague. This is the fault of the CIA, who had information for 16 months regarding al-Hazmi and al-Midhar and never shared it with the FBI or the State Department. The NSA, the agency which seems to be the most ignored agency regarding data collected over 3 years regarding 2 areas, Bin Laden's satellite phone and the home in Sana'a, Yemen, also did not share this information with the CIA, the FBI, or the State Department. The question is, why? The Ahmed al-Hada home, however, was now under pressure from multiple agencies immediately after the 9/11 attacks. In February of 2002, al-Hada's son, Samir al-Hada, committed suicide using a hand grenade as Yemen authorities raided the home. This was to avoid questioning by security forces about the coal bombing. Ahmed al-Hada would be arrested by Yemen authorities but released in 2006, never to be heard again mysteriously. In 2004, after revelations that the NSA had been wiretapping inside the United States, some media began to re-examine the circumstances of the hijackers' calls from the U.S., as the Bush administration uses the example of these calls as a justification for the NSA's domestic wiretapping program and the warrantless wiretapping of all Americans, all in the name of protecting national security. This would lead to numerous reforms for the NSA and give them a proverbial blank check from the Bush administration to start funding for massive wiretapping programs such as Trailblazer, which began data mining American civilians' metadata. As for Ahmed al-Hada, as of 2007, his whereabouts are unknown to this very day, seemingly disappeared from existence while leaving behind a changed and more vulnerable world.